Hey guys, and welcome back to another adventure of Solo Dan, a character on which I tried to solo the entirety of MoP Remix. Grab a snack, stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy the video. Another day, another round of dailies and raids, and while running my Mogushan vaults I start realizing how weak I am becoming. Kills take longer and longer, trash starts hurting, and while I still make it through, sometimes I wonder, at what cost? As I get to Twin Emperors, I really do get slapped around, but luckily my leech is barely enough to keep me alive. Another 3 dailies done, and at least I get a chance to regain some of my power, although I decide to not yet hand them in, and you will see why later. As I fly aimlessly, wondering what to do next, looking at my achievement tab, I spot a rare on the map, and taking him down awards me with the elusive level 50. Another raid unlocked, a new opportunity to showcase my power after my defeat in the Heart of Fear. But first, I want to cross some things off my list. Starting with another rare in the Jade Forest, granting me the Elusive Foes achievement, as well as the Tour the Jade Forest achievement. These award me a rare and an epic spool respectively. Next up, the Timeless Isle. There are some easy achievements I can get here, as well as some world bosses that respawn rapidly, giving me hope I can catch one solo potentially. I see that it is quite crowded, so I turn my attention to some treasures around the isles for another easy achievement. As I make my way back to the mainland, I stop by the Infinite Bazaar to hand in those dailies I talked about earlier. Handing these in at 50 or above awards me with epic spools instead of rare. Getting some nice bumps to my mastery is always welcome, but when they land on stamina, it always leaves a bit of a sour taste. The next stop, Terrace of the Endless Springs. With the end goal of 500k bronze in mind, I want to keep clearing raids to stock up, even if it grants me multiple levels and a low amount of power. We are playing for the end game now, and you know what the beautiful thing is about Terrace? There's almost no experience gain here if you don't pick up the experience items. The slightly less beautiful thing about Terrace is Lai Shi. I do luck out on my first pull due to her using Getaway again halfway through the fight, but unfortunately when I come to the last set of minions this happens. The next attempt you can see what happens if I don't roll the RNG for Getaway. Well, third time's the charm. Oh. I pull a couple of times until finally on my 6th pull I manage to get lucky enough to down her. Maybe I should consider tank spec next time. Time for Sha. And now that I know he doesn't reset when I move to another platform, this should be easy, right? Blizzard? Maybe it's just a bug. I should just go again. Well, that seemed to work somehow. After analyzing the footage, I can only assume that you need to get in combat with the miniboss as soon as you land. If you don't engage the miniboss, I think it just resets on you. That was a lot more effort than I was hoping for. But let's swiftly move on to something simpler. Trying to catch a world boss solo. And I have an idea. There is this island all the way to the north, far away from the mainland, where there is a world boss. And as I get there I think maybe I can catch him, so... As I see a group of people waiting, I turn around and realize that most of my ideas are actually quite stupid. Defeated, I leave it there for the night. Preparing with a good night's rest for the next challenge ahead. A few days of restricted time leave me to just do some dailies and raids, and sooner than I realized the level 60 mark is already reached. The stats at this time are looking quite dire, but I can still solo most of the raid bosses bar some exceptions. In Mogushan Vaults, I can still clear all bosses, although Twin Emperors is getting really tough. In Heart of Fear, well, for Blade Lord Tayak, you might see that I'm in tank spec. Well, I tried Havoc and this happened. Garrel on After is quite easy, and the Army of Bugs requires another switch to tank to be able to succeed. To save myself some experience from trash, I don't bother going to Amber Shaper, as I already know how that will end. I think it is time to see what we can do in Throne, don't you? But before we can get to Throne, we need to do the intro quest. We make our way to Throne of Thunder, and clear out the first trash and come face to face with the first boss, Jinrog the Breaker. This fight has a few mechanics, mainly related to water and lightning not being a good combination, so don't go dropping your toaster in your bathtub. As you fight him, he will send lightning orbs after you, which will leave a void zone after soaking the orb. Later in the fight, he will throw the tank into a pillar around the room, causing them to leak water. Standing in this water will increase your healing and your DPS, but any lightning that reaches the water will do raid-wide AoE damage. The first attempt goes quite well, until the second time I get thrown into a statue. This leaves a 5-second stun on me, and by the time I am out, I'm also very much not alive anymore. Second attempt, I decide to full blast as the pools come out, but unfortunately I do not make the DPS to skip the second stun. And I know what you're going to say in the comments, I should use Blink. And you're absolutely right, I'll get to that realization later. I decide to go a bit more defensive on Tinkers, swapping in Bloodthirsty Coral, and with that I barely live the second stun and finish off the boss. 1 down, 11 to go. Next up, the worst trash ever invented, but soon after we reach Horadon. Horadon has one difficult mechanic, which is the Tank Buster. This Tank Buster stacks infinitely and lasts for a whopping 70 seconds, so there's no kiting him around to be able to reset it, or at least not easily. By the end of the fight, I'm struggling around, trying to reset, and when the Warlord spawns in, it gets too much and I go down. The pull after I switch to my tank spec, and not surprisingly, it goes a lot smoother, and eventually Horadon falls. Unfortunately, on the council fight, I am a lot less lucky. The fight consists of 4 bosses and an evil purple spirit. The spirit flies into one of the bosses, empowering them and causing them to gain energy. When they reach 100 energy, they just one-shot you. To get the spirit out of them, you need to punch them in the face, and about 20% HP will do. The spirit will then move on to the next council member, and so on, until you defeat them all. The difficulty with the fight lies with the crowd control. With all this CC, my first pull does not end well. Nor do the pulls after that one. Realizing I should try more defenses, I go heavy on a defensive Tinker setup, but even that cannot keep me alive through the stun. In hindsight, I realize I never tried blinking out of the stun, something to try later for sure. Defeated, I leave the Throne of Thunder behind, with only 2 boss kills under my belt. I do, however, have one more raid to disappoint me. The Siege of Orgrimmar. Another level is gained before I hit the first boss, and while they excited me in the past, they started feeling really bad a while ago. Mercius is easy enough, deplete his health and he splits, then destroy the little blobs, and rinse and repeat until he goes down. The council fight again poses a problem, at least for my DPS spec, so after a swift wipe I switch to tank and it goes a lot better. I then continue to give Norishan one try before I head off for the night. The next day, I'm a bit torn on what to do. I decide to try and prep some of the scenario quests for when I inevitably hit level 70, starting off with the Blood in the Snow scenario and a Scarlet Monastery run for the Dungeon Daily quest, followed up by the first 4 bosses in Mogushan Vaults. Why 4? Well, my Hearthstone was off cooldown and I really wanted to go do this. Now, having a quick look at my stats made me instantly regret this decision. But why did I do this? Well, I recorded most of this footage on a Friday, and with the weekend coming up I had quite some time to play. If I wanted to take it really slow, I would have limited myself to the few bosses I could do and the dailies, but by clicking the button I feel like I could now go in any direction I wanted. Plus I get to spend my hard-earned bronze on gear. After picking up the 40k bronze for hitting level 70, I hit almost 200k bronze, which is close to halfway for full gear upgrades. Now before I start upgrading my gear, I need to get my gear up to par with the highest eye level that I can get through world drops, which is 346, as upgrading any lower gear would just be a massive waste of my bronze. At level 70, the dailies also award more bronze and more threads, making my progress even faster. If I can complete them, that is. I hand in the dailies, netting me 7.5k bronze, and also my first 346 eye level gear. But in order to start upgrading, I need an eye level 346 item in each of the slots. And for a quick overview, I end up my grind to 70 with 202k bronze and 22k threads on my cloak, which is not too shabby if you ask me. To see how dire this really is, I decide to start off with some questing. I make my way to the Isle of Thunder first, a zone where I would love to unlock something as fast as possible, and for this we have a bunch of scenarios to go through. We start off with the first solo scenario, and while in this scenario, I realize something. I am no longer confined to the mere restraints of a mortal man. I can finally unleash the power of the most powerful tool in my arsenal. A tool that I have longed for since level 10. The auto loot feature. No longer will I loot single items like a pleb. I can now auto loot. And from that scenario we get a headpiece. And then follows another scenario rewarding me with a pair of pants. And we cannot finish a scenario on the Isle of Thunder without unlocking another scenario apparently. I do love how they did the storytelling here. Even though they are all scenarios, they're quite cinematic and they tell a good story. And for some reason I can't help feeling like I'm in a Sly Cooper game, trying to prepare for our big heist. All of this eventually leads to the final boss fight, giving me a nice achievement, including some bronze and threads that come with it. The final scenario quest also rewards me with a belt. After the intro scenarios, I continue on with the unlocked dailies and eventually receive what I'm really here for. A key to the Palace of Lei Shen. I finish up the dailies, getting shoulders and boots, and along the way I picked up a weapon as well, giving me 7 out of 10 pieces I need. All I have left to find now are chest, wrists, and another weapon. And I have to say that went a lot faster than I expected it to. And the chests, well, that one appears shortly after, reducing the number of items I need to 2. Now the key I obtained earlier allows us to do a specific scenario once each day, the Trove of the Thunder King. By handing in a key right here, you can enter it and the goal is to avoid the traps and open as many chests as you can. There are small chests with little reward and these larger chests, which drop spools amongst other rewards, but these are harder to find or get to. But unless you're a demon hunter, that is. If you get to the end, there are even more rewards for you to pick up. However, I kind of forgot how this worked my first time around and totally missed this lever here to open the door. And here's me thinking that the key must be in one of the chests. Once I get back to the door and spot the lever, my time is running low. And I realize I won't make it to the end, so I focus on getting as many big chests as possible. And when the timer runs out, you get to open some of these extra chests as well, depending on how many trove keys you obtain during the run. My reward for this was 4 green spools and 5 blue spools. Not a bad haul for a derpy first run, I must say. During the run I also obtained some ritual stones, and these are used on the island to spawn rares. And these rares in turn drop quite some threads, and the more threads the merrier. So I will make sure to use these when I have these available. Soon after, I end up finishing the Isle of Thunder dailies, picking up another weapon along the way, leaving wrists as the last piece of gear I need. After I leave the island, I start questing my heart out, starting right here with some Shadowpan dailies and regular quests in Kunlai Summit. And while I am questing, it's probably a good time to mention some of the sub-goals on this character. I will need loads of power. And since everything can give me some degree of power in the way of threads or bronze, I want to do all of the remix achievements along the way. While I am at my weakest I will ever be at level 70, I thought a good way to start my power gain would be to do all reputation and questing achievements first. Hopefully along the way I can finish the achievements for killing rares in each zone as well, and both of these should in turn complete my tour of the zone achievements, as each zone has an achievement tasking you to finish some of that zone's sub-achievements. Along the way, I will focus on my dailies and Thunder Trove scenario, and when I get some time, I might jump into the raids to get some further bronze as well. Well, back to questing, and I finally get my last item, a set of bracers. This means that I can now spend all of my bronze on gear upgrades to exponentially increase my power. And with all my upgrades out of the way, I end up on 370 eye level, with stats that are starting to look at least slightly better. However, I still have a lot of bronze and gear to go. So I start my next day by jumping into the dailies. As to not overstep my boundaries, I stick to normal scenario and dungeons today. And while the scenario goes by easily, I am not so lucky with the dungeons, as halfway through Scholomance I have to change to tank spec to even stand a chance against Rattlegore. Also, these paintings stare at you, and I've never noticed this, but it is creeping me out. After being creeped out, my hopes for the raid daily start dwindling, but nevertheless I make my way to Mogushan Vaults. On my way, I stop to hand in my dailies and upgrade gear to pump out that last bit of power before stepping into the raid. First of all, I give Havoc a shot. The first boss takes quite some time but goes surprisingly well, and I make it through without any real issues. I'm less lucky with Fang, however. The first phase goes fine, but the stacking dot in phase 2 becomes too much for me to heal, and I fall just before phasing him again. In the next attempt I stack all my cooldowns and lust on the second phase, and I'm able to just phase him in time before the debuff gets too rough. It is a clean line to the finish, and shortly after the boss falls and my daily is completed. Considering the struggles I am having, I decide to leave it here for now. And up next, more distractions. The Throne of Thunder dailies. And of course some revenge on the Trove of the Thunder King scenario, which I really messed up last time. And this run went a lot better. Netting me about 19 spools, or almost 3,000 threads. Well worth the 5 minutes you spend here daily if you want some extra power. After handing in my dailies on the Isle of Thunder, I head back to questing. And this cycle continues for multiple days. Throne dailies, Thunder Trove scenario, regular dailies, and then some questing. The raid's out of sight, but not out of mind. I will come back for my revenge. Over the next few days I focus on getting some of the achievements out of the way. Starting with the Shadowpan rep while doing the Townlong Steps questline. After that we head to Kunlai Summit, picking up the elusive foes and Tour the Kunlai Summit achievements, before finishing up the zone with the campaign achievement. In between questing, I still do my dailies, and this time I decide to see how far I can get into Mogushan Vaults. Being at 382 eye level and 45,000 threads, I wondered how far I could get to. I already know the first bosses are possible, as I have been doing these for my daily quest, but what about the others? Garajal does not pose an immediate threat, his damage is up there, but not enough to bring me down. And after about a minute and a half he goes down. With the kings, it will all come down to whether I can live a melee attack from the first king, and my ability to heal that back before he melees me again. Illigon was an easy one phase surprisingly, mainly due to my tinkers doing big work on the stars, hit by my Troglaive. And the Twin Emperors hit really hard, and I fell near the end. As the RP and everything takes a while for this boss, I just decide to go tank spec for now and take them down without any hassle. I do for the first time, however, get an opportunistic strike for dodging all combo attacks from both of the kings. Personal achievement right there. And all in all, good to know that I can comfortably clear normal for bronze. Maybe next time I'll have a go at heroic. Next up, I finish up the Cloxy rep while farming out the Dread Wastes campaign. And while farming the Isle of Thunder dailies, I finally managed to get the Elusive Foes achievement there as well. The Golden Lotus rep is next, and this is easily done by just doing one round of dailies. I follow that with Valley of the Four Winds, engaging the adventures of Chen Stormstout and his brewery. And after a couple of days of this, repeating it over and over, I decided it's time to go out to the raids. Mogushan Vaults falls in 15 minutes, Terrors of the Endless Springs goes quite easily, and Heart of Fear, we're still being walled by Amber Shaper, but we're getting him to 41%, so we are making progress. I do a quick pit stop for upgrades before continuing on to the Throne of Thunder. By looking at how smooth Jinrock and Horadon go, my hopes are high. Council knocked me down a bit when I got one-shot by one of the boss mechanics. When the priest is empowered, she spawns this little mob to chase you, and if it reaches you, well, you die. Once I realized that, however, and by using Blink properly, the council was a pushover. Tortos just kicked the shell back when he starts breathing furiously, and after the 3 bells are rung, Megara offers us our next challenge. And that challenge is trying not to die of boredom, which is by far her most powerful mechanic. You know there are joys about being a solo character. Nobody spawns any unnecessary trash on the way to Chicken. Nobody dies by the snails. It is all roses and daisies on my way up here. And without anyone holding me back, I reach Chicken. Chicken periodically feeds the eggs in the nests around her arena, and after a while they grow into full-fledged ads which go to the arena and try to kill you. As I'm solo, I can't get to the ads, so my only option is to just burn the boss. And this counts for Durumu as well, although Durumu is a bit famous for his laser mechanic trying to blow up people, and I can't really deal with it properly, so I try to nuke him down before he kills me. After a couple of attempts, I decide to swap out some of my offensive tinkers for some more defensive ones, just to be able to live just slightly longer, after which I easily take Durumu down. For Primordius, you see these little slimes around the arena that he spawns? If you kill them, they'll drop either a red or a purple debuff. If you pick up 5 of the red ones, you will transform and get 5 positive buffs. If you pick up the purple ones, you'll get negative buffs, but they will still transform you if you get 5 stacks. Once you get 5 stacks, you do full damage to Primordius, so get the buffs and then guide him around the room and nuke him down. Dark Animus took me a couple of attempts, but eventually I landed on this strat. I tried to nuke some of the small ones really quickly, and as they're all following me, I start to kite them around while I'm still killing them. If I only got a few left, I go make my way to Dark Animus, kill one of the big ones or the small ones around Dark Animus, activate him, and then get him down. And this ends up working out really well. Iron Quan doesn't really do anything, but just make sure you get Blink, just in case you get stunned by the lightning mechanics. Twins and Lei Shen follow after that, and arguably they're not that difficult. I'm tanky enough on Lei Shen to survive the horde and horde of enemies that he spawns. I don't need much more for Lei Shen, I just need to live. This means that there's only one raid to go. And well, we got that blasted bug in Heart of Fear. I head back into Siege of Orgrimmar, and I down Immersius, Council and Norishan quite easy. But as I get to Shaw, this is another DPS wall. After a while into the fight, he will put you into a prison, and once that's done, you can't do anything. Normally it would take 2 players to free you out of this prison, but as you don't have any players, you will just die, eventually. The good thing about Shaw is that it phases at about 30%, and that resets his timer for the prison. So if I can just get him low enough to 30, and then win that second DPS race from 30 to 0 before the prison happens, I should be good to go. Currently I'm about 15% off, so I need to go get some more power. I head back to questing, as I have no more raids left to do for now, and I finish up my questing spree with the Jade Forest, Crassoring Wilds, and the Dominance Offensive questline. And with those, most of the questing is out of the way. I have some reps to finish up, but that is easily done later. For now, we will focus on progress, and getting the normal raid sweep completed. So without further ado, we do one more round of gear upgrades, one more Trove of the Thunder King, before heading off to the first remaining wall, Amber Shaper. Surely 417 eye level and 90,000 threads will be enough. The raid itself goes easily enough, and when I reach Amber Shaper, I pull all of the trash on top of him to hopefully benefit slightly from the Victory Fire Tinker. I push him very low before the big ad spawns, and after downing the ad I make it to phase 2. I push him lower and lower, and well, just see what happens. That one was close. He got me transformed just at the end, but I managed to just punch him once for the victory, which was really nice. And with that, one of the 2 walls are broken. And we head to the final boss in the Heart of Fear. Final boss is Empress. She has 2 main mechanics to worry about. Throughout the entire fight, she will stack a tank debuff on me, which at 5 stacks mind controls me and obviously ends the fight then and there. In the last phase, she also spams a bunch of fears on you, which last 20 seconds, and there's no real way to avoid it. So I either need to live the 20 seconds fear and get a little bit of damage in between, or I need to beat her before she fears me. Another boss, another DPS race. But me and my genius brain have come up with a plan. When I was transformed into a monstrosity last boss and died after the boss died, that monstrosity didn't go away, and it has 400 million HP, which is more than the Empress. Now there is a certain Tinker that stores 10% of your damage on a mob and bursts it to mobs around him once he dies. 10% of 400 million is 40 million, which is about a quarter of her HP. So I get to work on the ad, and just before it dies I pull the boss, and then the 40 million damage just takes off. Wait, where did my 40 million damage go? Luckily enough, our damage is more than enough to take her down, before any of the annoying mechanics loop me into a death cycle. And with that out of the way, we have one more raid left. 13 bosses stand between me and my victory over normal raids. The first 3 we have already down, so let's skip immediately to the Shaw of Pride. If we have the DPS to make it to phase 2, or the Shaw cages me, we should be golden. And with a couple of seconds to spare, we make it easily and finish up the boss. Next up we take a teleporter to the harbor and make our way to Orgrimmar. But in our way, probably the biggest wall of the run. A boss that no one would expect to be this difficult on a solo character. The Iron Juggernaut. And this, the 5th boss of the raid, with its stacking tank debuff and bombs running amok, is seriously no joke. This is as tough as a 5th boss can get. Possibly the hardest 5th boss ever met. We blow up the Orgrimmar gates and make our way inside. We come face to face with the Corcoran Dark Shamans. A duo that gets more a bit. Then we go to General Nazgrim. Surely he will be... Malkorok with its massive cleaves and sheer damage will surely be a... Foils? Stock? Siegecrafter? They all fall shortly after, without much effort. Maybe Shaw was really the biggest wall in this place. Paragons, the 12th and the penultimate boss, by some type of horrible pun, bugged out on me. So I had to wait for it to reset before taking them down properly. And with that speedrun of a raid, I have come face to face with the final challenge. The War Chief of the Horde, Garrosh Hellscream. This 3-phase fight will be a battle of wills, endurance, DPS race, everything you've ever hoped for. And so I get to work, popping all cooldowns on the pull, making sure to kill one of the engineers as they spawn in phase 1, pushing him into phase 2 shortly after. I blast through the intermission and started on Garrosh's 2nd health bar, slowly depleting this as we move through the fight, until mind control resets the fight. But I'm close to phasing him to the final phase. As long as I can make it there, I should have the DPS to kill him. I decide to move Bloodlust to phase 2, pop all my cooldowns on the first intermission, and barely make it to phase 3. After which the final push to the finish line is in sight. My entire journey flashing before my eyes. The last couple of percentage fade away from Garrosh. And with that, we have finished all normal raids completely solo. As we reflect on our victory, there is one question that keeps popping up. What next? And for some days I have grinded raids, I had done dailies, finished up the achievements, but as I progressed through the heroic raids I felt the repetition setting in. The walls had the same amber-shaped face, and I felt like the next grind would just be the exact same as the one before, just over and over again. I was hoping that some of the heroic mechanics would make for some good content and some flexibility, but not really. So I decided to bury the hatchet here for now, and leave MoP remakes behind. Did I have fun? Yes, definitely. And was I able to solo MoP remix? Well, that depends on your definition of it. But I've made peace with where I leave this behind. And who knows, maybe Solo Dan will make a return in the near future? Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing, it really helps out the channel a lot. And all that's left for me to do is to wish you a wonderful day. Bye bye.